Hollywood has always been built on relationships. The connection between an actor and director can create magic on screen or turn into an absolute nightmare behind the scenes. At 81 years old, Robert De Niro has worked with some of the greatest filmmakers in cinema history. Martin Scorsese became his creative soulmate. Francis Ford Coppola gave him iconic roles. But not every director left a good impression on the legendary actor. After decades of silence, De Niro has finally opened up about the 7 directors he absolutely refused to work with again. What he reveals will shock you and change how you view Hollywood forever. Picture this. You are one of the most respected actors in Hollywood history. You have 2 Oscars sitting on your shelf. You have starred in films that define generations. You can choose any project you want, yet there are 7 directors whose calls you will never answer again. That is the reality for Robert De Niro, and the stories behind these broken relationships reveal the darker side of filmmaking that audiences rarely see. These are not just creative differences. These are profound betrayals of trust and respect that left permanent scars on one of cinema's greatest talents. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Director 1. Tony Kaye. The first director on De Niro's list surprised everyone in the industry. Tony Kaye was a filmmaker who seemed perfect for collaboration on paper. His visual style was distinctive, and his reputation suggested he could create something special with the right actors. The problem was not about talent or vision. It was about respect and collaboration. De Niro has always been known for his intense preparation. He gains weight. He loses weight. He learns new skills. He studies real people. He becomes the character completely. This is not just acting for De Niro. This is transformation. This is art at its highest level. But Tony Kaye treated actors like puppets on strings. He wanted them to simply read lines without bringing their own interpretation or depth to the characters. For an actor like De Niro, who built his entire career on deep character work and method acting, this approach was completely unacceptable and almost insulting. The shooting became a battle of wills from day one. Every scene turned into an argument about approach. Every take became a power struggle between 2 strong personalities. De Niro would suggest something based on his deep understanding of the character. He would propose a different reading, or a subtle gesture that came from weeks of preparation and research. Kaye would shut him down immediately without even considering the idea or its merit. There was no collaboration. There was no creative exchange. There was no respect for what De Niro brought to the table after decades of experience. It was just a dictator giving orders and expecting complete obedience from everyone on set. When filming finally wrapped after months of unbearable tension, De Niro made a private promise to himself. Never again would he subject himself to this kind of creative suffocation. Director 2. Michael Cimino. The second director represents a completely different kind of problem that was equally frustrating. Michael Cimino was someone De Niro actually admired initially based on his previous work. The director had proven himself with films that critics loved. He had a unique vision and interesting ideas that attracted top talent from across the industry. But when cameras started rolling on their project, everything fell apart in spectacular fashion. Cimino was completely disorganized despite his previous successes and critical acclaim. There was no clear plan from day to day. Nobody knew what would happen next. Scenes would be rewritten just hours before shooting was scheduled to begin. Sometimes the entire script would change while actors were already in costume and full makeup ready to perform. De Niro thrives on preparation and structure. He needs to know his character inside and out before the camera rolls. But Cimino made preparation completely impossible with his chaotic approach. How do you prepare for a scene that might not even exist tomorrow? How do you build a coherent character when the character keeps changing fundamentally every few days? The production became absolute chaos that spiraled out of control. Shooting days stretched endlessly because nobody knew what they were actually doing from moment to moment. De Niro watched millions of dollars get wasted on confusion and indecision. He values professionalism above almost everything else in this business. This experience was the complete opposite of professional behavior. Crew members quit in frustration. Actors looked completely lost on set. The budget spiraled out of control beyond anyone's imagination. When the film finally limped to completion after massive delays and cost overruns, De Niro knew with absolute certainty that he could never put himself through that kind of disorganized nightmare. Again, Director 3, John McTiernan director, number 3 on the list, created problems of a more personal and psychological nature that affected everyone. John McTiernan had a reputation for being brilliant, but difficult to work with on his projects. De Niro thought he could handle difficult personalities without any major issues. He had worked with intense and demanding directors before without major conflicts, but this situation went far beyond intensity into actual cruelty and psychological abuse. McTiernan would humiliate actors in front of the entire crew during takes for everyone to witness. If someone made even a small mistake, the director would scream vicious insults that cut deep. If a take was not absolutely perfect, the director would mock and belittle the performer publicly. De Niro watched younger and less established actors reduced to tears on set regularly. He saw crew members treated like absolute garbage for minor errors that could be easily fixed. This director genuinely believed that creating an atmosphere of fear and misery would somehow produce better performances on camera. De Niro completely disagreed with this toxic philosophy that destroys people. He has worked with demanding directors throughout his long career. Scorsese pushes actors extremely hard, but always with underlying respect and genuine collaboration. McTiernan just wanted to feel powerful by making others feel small and worthless as human beings. The environment became so toxic that people dreaded coming to work each day. De Niro finished his contractual obligations because he is a consummate professional, but he made it absolutely clear through his agents and representatives that he would never work with this person again under any circumstances whatsoever. Director 4. Brian De Palma, the fourth director, betrayed De Niro in a way that still bothers him decades later to this day. Brian De Palma promised one kind of movie during development, but delivered something completely and fundamentally different when cameras rolled. This filmmaker talked extensively about making a serious, character-driven drama during the pitch meetings and early development phases that got everyone excited. De Niro signed on based entirely on that artistic vision and creative promise. He turned down other potentially great projects to make room in his busy schedule. He committed fully to what he thought would be meaningful work that challenged him. Then production began, and everything changed almost overnight without warning. De Palma suddenly wanted to make the film more commercial and mainstream for wider audiences. Deep, meaningful scenes got cut entirely for generic action sequences that any actor could perform. Complex dialogue that revealed character got replaced with forgettable one-liners that served no purpose. Character development got sacrificed completely for expensive special effects that looked impressive but meant nothing. De Niro found himself trapped in a completely different movie than the one he had agreed to make. He tried repeatedly to talk with the director about returning to the original vision they had all discussed. De Palma made promises during those conversations, but never kept any of them when it mattered. By the time the film was released to audiences, it was barely recognizable from what De Niro thought he was creating. He felt tricked and manipulated by someone he had trusted. He felt his time and considerable talent had been wasted on a bait-and-switch scheme. Trust once broken is extremely hard to repair in any relationship. In this particular case, it was never repaired, and never will be repaired. Director 5. Adrian Lyne. Director 5 represents a fundamental clash of artistic values and storytelling philosophy that could not be bridged. Adrian Lyne was extremely talented and commercially successful with audiences worldwide. On paper, the collaboration should have created something amazing that audiences and critics loved. But their approaches to storytelling were completely incompatible from the very start. De Niro believes deeply in emotional truth and authenticity above all else. He wants characters to feel absolutely real, even in extraordinary circumstances that test them. Lyne cared only about style and visual spectacle that looked good in trailers. Every single shot needed to look cool and magazine-worthy for publicity. Every moment needed to be visually striking regardless of emotional content or character truth. But there was no heart underneath all the beautiful images and perfect lighting. De Niro would ask important questions about his character's motivation and psychology. Lyne would only talk about camera angles and lighting setups. De Niro would discuss emotional arcs and character development over time. Lyne would discuss color palettes and production design elements. They were speaking completely different languages that could not be translated. Neither approach is necessarily wrong in isolation, but they could not find any common ground for collaboration. The final film looked absolutely gorgeous on screen. The cinematography was stunning and won praise, but it felt completely empty emotionally to anyone watching carefully. Critics praised the incredible visuals, but found the performances surprisingly hollow and lifeless. De Niro knew his performance was hollow because he was never allowed to build a real three-dimensional character. He was just a beautiful figure in the director's pretty pictures that meant nothing. That is not why De Niro became an actor decades ago. That is not what drives him to continue working. Director 6. Joel Schumacher, the sixth director on the list, created an uncomfortable working environment for reasons that went far beyond normal filmmaking challenges. Joel Schumacher had serious boundary issues that made everyone uncomfortable on set and off. This director would call actors at absolutely all hours with random thoughts that could wait. 3 in the morning phone calls about minor script details that could easily wait until morning. Showing up uninvited at actors' homes without any warning or permission. Making inappropriate demands about their personal lives and how they should prepare for roles. De Niro is incredibly dedicated to his craft and always has been throughout his career. But he also values his privacy and personal boundaries as a human being. He has a family that matters to him. He has a life outside of acting that he cherishes. Schumacher seemed to genuinely think that making a movie meant owning the actors completely. There was no separation between work and personal life in his mind whatsoever. The director wanted total access all the time to everyone involved in the production. De Niro tried to set reasonable boundaries politely at first, hoping the director would understand. Schumacher completely ignored them and continued the invasive behavior without change. De Niro set boundaries more firmly and clearly through proper channels. Schumacher got deeply offended and made the entire work environment hostile in retaliation against De Niro. What should have been a collaborative creative process became a strange psychological battle of wills. When filming finally ended, De Niro was genuinely relieved and grateful. He made absolutely sure his entire team knew never to accept any offers from this director again. Director 7. Michael Mann, the seventh and final director on De Niro's list, represents perhaps the saddest situation of all these relationships. Michael Mann was someone De Niro genuinely liked as a person initially when they first met. They had actually worked together before quite successfully on a well-received project. The collaboration had been positive, and the results were good for everyone involved. But something fundamental changed in Mann between their first collaboration and their second attempt years later. Success and critical praise went straight to the director's head in destructive ways. The second collaboration was completely different from the first in every possible way. The director, who had once listened carefully and collaborated openly, now believed his own hype completely. Every single idea he had was pure genius in his mind that could not be questioned. Every suggestion from others was automatically wrong and dismissed without consideration. The humble, passionate filmmaker had become an arrogant egomaniac who could not be reasoned with anymore. De Niro tried repeatedly to reconnect with the person he had worked with before successfully. But that person was completely gone, replaced by someone who thought they could do absolutely no wrong. The irony is that the film suffered tremendously because of this arrogance and closed-mindedness. Without any honest feedback, the director made numerous poor choices that hurt the final product. The movie that should have been great based on the talent involved was merely okay at best. De Niro felt more sad than angry about the situation when it ended. He genuinely mourned the loss of what could have been a long and fruitful creative partnership. But he also knew with certainty that he could not work with this new version of the director. Sometimes people change dramatically, and not for the better, as they achieve success. These 7 painful experiences taught De Niro critically important lessons about choosing collaborators wisely in Hollywood. Talent alone is never enough to make a collaboration work successfully over time. A director can be brilliantly talented, but if they do not treat people with basic respect, the collaboration will inevitably fail. A director can have amazing visual style, but if they do not genuinely care about actors and characters, the film will feel emotionally empty. Success and money mean absolutely nothing if the process is miserable and soul-crushing for everyone. De Niro has reached a point in his legendary career where he simply does not need to work with difficult or toxic people anymore. He does not need the money at this stage of life. He does not need more fame or recognition or awards. What he genuinely wants is to create meaningful work with people who share his core values and respect his extensive process. Looking back at these 7 directors and these 7 failed collaborations reveals something crucial about Hollywood culture. The film industry often focuses only on the final product and box office numbers. Did the movie make money? Did it win awards? Did critics like it? But the journey matters tremendously too for the people involved. The people who make movies are human beings with real feelings and dignity that deserve respect always. When directors forget that fundamental truth, they might still produce commercially successful films, but they lose something absolutely essential. They lose the trust and respect of talented collaborators like De Niro forever, and that cannot be bought. At 81, De Niro has absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone in the industry or the world. He has cemented his legacy as one of the greatest actors who ever lived without question. He can be extremely selective about projects and turn down most offers. He can demand certain standards and expect them to be met without compromise. And those standards include working only with directors who treat filmmaking as a truly collaborative art form built on mutual respect. The 7 directors on his permanent refused list all failed that basic test in different ways. Some were outright cruel to people. Some were hopelessly disorganized and unprofessional. Some were fundamentally dishonest about their intentions. Some violated boundaries inappropriately without remorse. Some valued empty style over meaningful substance. Some let ego completely destroy creativity and collaboration opportunities. De Niro's remarkable openness about these difficult experiences sends a powerful message to the entire industry. Actors, even legendary ones, do not have to accept mistreatment ever from anyone. They do not have to work in toxic environments that damage them. They do not have to sacrifice their dignity for a paycheck, no matter how large. Young actors looking up to De Niro can learn valuable lessons from his example and strength. Choose your collaborators extremely carefully based on character. Talent matters, but character matters even more in the long run. A difficult shoot with a respectful director is infinitely better than an easy shoot with someone who treats people badly. The film industry is slowly changing for the better in recent years. Conversations about workplace culture and respect have become more common and necessary. Stories like De Niro's help push that change forward in meaningful ways. When someone of his immense stature speaks honestly about refusing to work with certain directors, it empowers others to do the same. It reminds everyone that filmmaking should be challenging but not cruel to participants. It should demand excellence, but not at the cost of human dignity and respect. As De Niro enters this final phase of his remarkable career, he continues to work but only on projects that genuinely excite him. He only collaborates with people he trusts completely based on past experience or strong recommendations. His recent collaborations have been with directors who understand his process and value his input. These films might not all become classics that define cinema, but they are made with respect and professionalism and genuine collaboration. That matters to De Niro more than box office numbers or awards at this point.